Anyone with a pet understands the distressing feeling that ensues when their beloved companion goes missing. In this particular case, the absent dog finally made it back home but collapsed at the doorstep. What unfolded next left his family stunned, a surprising note found on his collar. Louis the sheepdog had a habit of going for walks by himself. He lived on a farm, and when he was younger, he had lots of energy, but as he got older, he didn't go out alone as much. Being 12 years old, he didn't wander far or for very long. He preferred resting in the sun. However, one day, he went for his usual morning outing and didn't return. His family became worried after a few hours. They wondered if he got lost or was too tired to come back. They searched everywhere they could think of on the farm, checking under vehicles and inside buildings, but couldn't find him. Louis had never strayed beyond their property before, and this was the first time he had gone missing, which terrified them. They went back home and contacted local veterinarians, but nobody had seen Louis. They even called neighboring farms when suddenly they heard a sound at the door. Louis had returned home. The missing dog had come home and collapsed at the door right away. Louis was exhausted. Where had the old boy been all day? He didn't look good. Then his family saw a shocking note on his collar. It was from a neighbor, and it said, "Louis is the hero of the day. He led me to Maddie in distress. Cheers, Rob." Rob lived on a farm a short distance away, and his dog Maddie was best friends with Louis. They had played together since she was a young pup. Even now that Louis was older, she was still the one dog that could inspire him to play. But Maddie and Rob's farm was much farther away than Louis normally walked. The family had to find out what happened. They phoned Rob to find out, and he had an incredible story to tell them. Rob had to go out in the morning and run some errands. He had a doctor's appointment and couldn't move it. Normally, Rob preferred to lock Maddie up in a fenced yard instead of allowing her to run free on the entire farm. That way, she could go in the house and be outside if she wanted, but she would also be safe. But this particular morning, he couldn't find her before he had to leave. He called and called, but she didn't come back. It could have been that she was out in the fields and just didn't hear him, but he didn't like to leave her like that. However, he didn't have much of a choice. He had to go to be on time for his appointment. He took comfort in knowing that she knew her way around the farm and would be fine. He just hoped that she would be home by the time he came back. That didn't mean he didn't worry the entire time that she was out. His doctor's appointment went well, and they didn't find anything worrisome. That was great, but his mind wasn't on that. He went to a few places, paid bills, bought what he needed to, and got home later that morning, but still Maddie was nowhere in sight. It had been hours, and he started to panic. So he was very shocked when he got to his front door and saw a dog waiting for him. The only problem was that it wasn't his dog. Instead, it was Louis who stood there. He was so shocked by the dog's appearance that he didn't even think about phoning his family to let them know that the dog was there. What the pup did next was going to shock him even more. Louis looked over at him, and then he started walking away into the woods. But when Rob didn't follow him, he came back right away. The old sheepdog grabbed Rob's jacket and pulled at him. Finally, Rob got the message. The dog wanted Rob to follow him into the woods, so he followed the dog. They had walked for a while when Lou sat down and looked up at Rob. At first, he didn't understand what Louis was trying to show him. There were a few piles of wood next to the dog, but the man couldn't see anything strange. The dog sat next to one of the piles and wouldn't move when Rob called him. Rob wanted to go home and get Lou's family, but then he heard moaning coming from underneath the woodpile. He had to lie down next to the pile and peek inside through a tiny hole. It was Maddie. She had somehow crawled underneath the woodpile, and now she was stuck there. She looked so sad. Rob couldn't help but wonder how long the poor pup had been stuck. Even more surprising was that Louis had seemed to know that his friend was in trouble even from miles away, and he had come to make sure that she got the help she needed. They had to be careful digging her out. They didn't want the pile to come crashing down on Maddie while they were trying to rescue her. Rob had no one who could help him dig. The workers on his farm had all gone home for the day, but that didn't mean he was alone. As soon as Rob started to dig, the old dog started digging right along with him. Louis wasn't planning on getting this far and then abandoning his friend. The dog dug like he was a young boy, grabbing a piece of wood at a time and pulling it away from the pile. It took a lot of energy at 12. This was the most exertion that the dog had had in a while, but he was digging as quickly as he could. Old or not, He knew his way around digging holes. Rob and the dog worked as fast as they could. Poor Maddie was panting and seemed very stressed. She kept trying to get out, and when she couldn't, she would start to freak out even more. They had to get her out quickly, or she could injure herself trying to get out or even pull the entire thing down on her. They were not going to let that happen. It took a while, but finally they had a corner dugout that was big enough for Maddie to crawl out of. She got out as fast as she could. Then she went to lie down next to Rob, and Louie came over and licked her. Both of the dogs were super tired. They were also overheated, because he had been working hard, and Maddie because she was so stressed out. They jumped into a nearby pond. There they cooled down and drank big gulps of water. But it was clear that the adrenaline was beginning to wear off. Both dogs were dragging their feet, and they could hardly walk. Rob couldn't carry both of them, and he had to get them home. They walked with him, but as soon as they got home, Maddie went to lie in her dog bed, and Louie walked to the car and waited. He wanted to go home. Rob didn't want to leave Maddie alone too long, but he couldn't let Louie walk on the way back to his house. That's why he tied the note to Lou's collar and dropped him at home. As soon as Lou reached the door, Rob rushed home. Maddie was sleeping peacefully, and with the resilience of a young pup, she would soon feel a lot better. But the same could not be said for Louie. He was really tired and weak, and his family had to help him from the door to his bed. He didn't even want to eat. They stayed up all night, worried that the exciting day had been too much for the old dog. They wondered if he might have made a big sacrifice just to help his friend. They couldn't imagine it ending that way while he was still alive. By morning, they felt incredibly relieved, but Louie still didn't seem well. They carried him outside but had to bring him back inside after he was done. They had planned to take him to the vet, but first, someone wanted to express their gratitude. Rob and Maddie brought a box of treats to thank Louie. When he saw his friend, he perked up and appeared much happier and relaxed. They still took him to the vet, who found that he was surprisingly healthy for an older dog. The dog showed everyone the true meaning of sacrifice. Fortunately, this time, everything worked out, and they could continue to have the lovely dog with them for some more time.